I want to say like a foot and a half, 1 foot
Wow.
and a half of snow.
Man.
But then the city comes and plows our street and then blocks in all the cars on the driveway. So it's like up to above my license plate, so I can't get out. So I was like, well, okay.
Yeah, post a picture of her car just snowed in, just piled up.
Yeah, Eddie writes like "R.I.P. your car," and I was like, honestly. Anyways,
All right, y'all ready to rock?
Wait, Kill, how's my
Yes, sir.
volume?
it's good.
It's good.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good. All right, let's get ready to rock. What's good? You tune to Apartment 5B podcast hosted by your man Kill. I got my squad with me as always. Ladies first. Porsche, what's good?
How's it going, Kill?
Good. Vague, you know what? There's a little feedback. You got any headphones or something?
Yeah, I gotta find them.
All right, yeah, we'll take a minute.
All right.
Yeah, man. But honestly, it may sound crazy, but I kind of miss that snow, man, because
Yeah, you
I haven't
guys
experienced
got snow,
that.
right?
Not really.
Oh,
My brother's up in Mammoth, Northern California.
right.
And so he gets more of that snow.
But my cousins are in LA, and everyone was like out sledding, and I was like, "What are you guys doing?" I'm like, "Are you guys like? Where are you?" And they're like, "We're in LA," and I was like, "Oh, maybe they weren't."
I don't
in LA?
know. People take liberties when they say LA.
Yeah,
it's like
true.
LA County, and then even if you're on the outskirts somewhere up north, they're like, it's close enough to LA.
That's like where I live. I live in a suburb, but I say Vancouver because there's no way in hell someone's gonna know where I live. Like it sounds like, yeah.
So hey, where are you at? Are you in LA?
Yeah, I'm considered LA County, but I'm in North Hollywood. That's where I'm at right now. So
all right, we gotta try and link up because I'm gonna be out there next month.
What?
All right, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm gonna be out there.
Going to the West Coast. What are you doing, Kill? Producing for who?
No, I wish. What it was is I was like, yo, like a couple of people, I've been trying to write scripts. So a couple of people I've been talking to been like, yo, you need to get to LA. And I was like, y'all just don't got the money right now. But I was like, I found a way for my job. I found a conference out there that my job is gonna pay for to send me out there. So that's real dope. Here's the crazy thing of why I love Twitter so much. So Mousse comes to me one day. He's like, yo, I don't know this person's name, so we'll just call him Jay. He was like, yo, Jay follows you. And I'm like, fuck it's Jay. And he was like, yo, it's Kendrick Lamar's video director. Like he does all the videos for TDE and everything. Like he follows you. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So fast forward like 3 months, and Mousse is in LA because he was in a showcase out there. And I see on his IG, he's shooting a video. And I'm like, yo, who's shooting a video for you? He was like, Jay. And I'm like, wait a second, you got Kendrick Lamar's video director shooting a video for you right now. He was like, yeah. I was like, how much did he charge you? He's like, nothing. I said, how did you link up with this nigga? He said, because he said he knew me. He was like, I told him I know you, and you produced my album, and he's doing the video for free for me. And I'm like,
damn.
Oh my God.
So people are name dropping you for clout now, Kill.
Bro, and the funniest part is so I DM'd the dude, and then I realized me and him had been talking for a while about Polo. Like that's the thing. Like his bio doesn't say anything about TDE or video.
Those are the best kind of people.
It doesn't say anything about
kind of
that.
people.
So it's like we be talking about Polo.
The best kind of people.
We've been talking about Polo all day. You know what I mean? And it's just like I'm like, oh shit. So I'm like, yo, good looking for doing that video for Mousse. He was like, oh, it's all love. And I was like, yo, I'm gonna be in LA. I would love to link up with you. He's like, fuck yeah. You know what I mean? So it's slowly but surely, prayerfully coming together, man. Slowly but surely coming together. Yeah. All right, Veg. Yeah, it sounds better. You straight over there, Veg?
I think so. These joints might die on me because I don't know how charged they are.
All right, they sound good. Is it
worse? Is it better?
No. It's perfect. It's perfect. There's no feedback whatsoever. Rec, what's up with you, man?
What's good? What's good?
All right, y'all ready to get started again? All right, let's go.
Sir.
What's good? You tune to Apartment 5B podcast hosted by your man Kill. I got my squad with me in effect. As always, ladies first. Porsche, what's good?
How's it going, Kill?
Everything is good. Eddie, what's going on, good brother?
I'm doing good. Blessed, man.
No doubt. Vegas, out the planet of Brooklyn. What's going on, man? Veg, what's good?
Man, you know what I'm saying? We having a great off season, you know what I'm saying? We ain't gone and nothing like that.
I hear you. I hear you. And out to Houston with the Astros, my man DJ Rec One. What's going on, man?
Look, man, I live in Houston, but you see the hat.
I
Just
understand.
just because you can get a 4-bedroom for $1,500 down here, don't mean my heart is not home.
No doubt. I definitely feel you. Y'all know me. Let's jump right into it. A couple of weeks ago, Vague hit me like, yo, Kill, you know, it's the Shinin's 25th anniversary, Smith & Wesson. I can't keep up with anniversaries, so God bless you all who can, because I'm so out the loop. I'm lucky to remember Naomi's birthday every year. So I appreciate that, Vague. But The Shinin, one of my favorite hip-hop albums of all time. Easily, I don't know where it ranks in the top 20 or whatever, but I know it's one of my favorite albums. So tonight we're going to be chopping it up about the first time you heard Smith & Wesson, the first time you became a fan of Smith & Wesson. And let me break this down for people because there was a little, not hoopla, but some hoopla last week on the timeline. Porsche and I are now joined at the hip because more people are always tweeting at me and Porsche now. So somebody was like, yo, what's this Granddaddy IU album about? And I said, yo, you know, I gave a little research of what I knew from the Juice Crew book. And then I was like, but I was never a fan. And people thought I was taking a shot at the boy. And I wasn't. I was saying I liked the album, but I wasn't a fan. So I tried to give the perspective of same thing with Tribe. When I heard People's Instinctive, I liked it, but I wouldn't say I was a Tribe fan. So when I say I'm not a fan of something, it doesn't mean I wasn't dissing Granddaddy IU's album. I was just saying, like, I was waiting for something else to come to now make me a fan. Same thing with the Roots. I wasn't a fan after Do You Want More. I was like, they cool. But then when I heard Illadelph, I became a fan. Or when I heard Low End Theory, I could say I'm a fan of Tribe. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean by the difference between when did you hear Smith & Wesson and when did you become a fan. Our fave songs on The Shinin'. And then eventually I want to get around to what happened to Smith & Wesson. You know, a lot of people feel like they never came back to reach this kind of glory of The Shinin'. While other groups during those periods did. You know, Mob had the infamous and came back with Hell on Earth and Murder Music and things like that. So what was it? And one of the debates we always used to get into at Morgan at 88.9 was at that time in 1995, what duo was doper? Smith & Wesson, Mobb Deep, The Shinin', or The Infamous. So we're going to get all that today. Porsche, tell me, the first time you heard Smith & Wesson versus the first time you became a fan of Smith & Wesson.
So I was a little bit late to Smith & Wesson because I mean, I've talked about it before. I moved to like BC to Vancouver, sort of like in my teenage years. And so this is where, when I moved to Vancouver is where I got most of my exposure to hip hop and albums and the ability, they became accessible to me. Where I was living before, it was not possible at all. And so for me, I was late. I was about a year late to even like hearing that album, but I kind of like them almost not, I don't want to say right away, but within the year. So I heard The Shinin' in 96. Okay. And then like it became part of my rotation, you know, and it grew on me. So I liked it. When I really, really became a fan was probably, I would say off of that album, yeah, about a year later. All so right. About 97.
All right, no doubt. Rec, what about you?
So I probably became a fan, or like when I first heard them on the Black Moon joint. I didn't know that's who they were because I you know, that Black Moon was new at the time. But I first heard them on the Black Moon album. And I mean, I thought it was cool, you know, like I'm like, okay, this album is dope. These guys, they spit. But when I heard Bucktown, that's when I first got hip to like, okay, are these the same guys? And I realized they were. And that was it for me. I was a fan from that moment on. It's funny because that's the nickname for the part of the city I grew up in. They call it Bucktown. So it stuck, man, just because of the name of the song and just that's the part of the town I'm from. So that's when I knew.
All right, no doubt. Eddie, what about you?
Yeah, pretty much the same as Rec. I remember hearing them on that Black Moon album. But you know, it's kind of like, all right, you hear this album, you know who the main act is, but you don't know who's really featured on it. And then, yeah, same thing when I heard Bucktown. I became a fan, and then Soundboy Burial. After that, it was a wrap. It was like, man, these dudes are serious.
All right, no doubt. Brooklyn, Vague, you tell me. You was in Brooklyn at the time. what was it with you with the first time you heard Smith and Wesson and became a fan?
All right, first of all, I gotta do a mic check. Y'all can hear me?
Yeah, you good.
Okay, because I can't hear anyone else.
Oh man.
Yeah, I can't hear anyone else but you. But the first time I heard Smith and Wesson, I think I heard "Let's Get It On like a mixtape or something like that, and I didn't initially put two and two together that they were connected with Boot Camp Click. You know what I'm saying? I remember seeing a bunch of cats in the videos, but of Black Moon videos, but I didn't know who was who at that time, because Black Moon was new to me. But I remember I heard the song and I was like, damn, what song is this? This song is crazy. And I remember not too long after that, the video came out. And once I saw the video, like I instantly went to the record store probably that weekend and had to pick up the single, partially because, I really liked the record. It was real grimy sounding, you know what I'm saying? It was that mid 90s traditional sound. And, and they was from Brooklyn. So, there was a sense of pride there also with this new group coming out. And I loved the back and forth they had, so a lot of that, I found really dope. So I was instantly anticipating their music because not just the beats and that particular single, but they also had like dope rap voices. You know what I'm saying? As far as like having depth, as far as still having like real deep voice that kind of sound grimy with the beat, and Tech had a certain sound to the way he flipped, and they was they weren't similar. It was just dope because it was a new duo. They was out of BK, you know what I'm saying? I was already loving Black Moon, and it was just this real grimy sound that just kind of represented the way New York or Brooklyn in particular was at that time. So, I mean, off that song alone, I was already locked in.
Right. No doubt. And it's similar with me. Definitely off this Black Moon album. For me, it was the joint on Blacksmith and Wesson. You know what I mean? And when Tech, at that time, it's gotta be 93. So I'm just falling in love with Low and everything like that. And he had that line, I keep a Blacksmith and Wesson in my polo jacket. You know what I mean? And that just for me was just a quote right there. Like I would always say that line and everything like that. So that's when the first time I heard him and Still. And at first, I won't hold you, I wasn't a real big fan of Still. I always liked Tech's voice better. You know what I mean? On that joint. But then just like with everybody else, when I heard Bucktown again, like I'm not comparing these two songs. So before anybody even takes it there, I'm not. It reminds me the first time I heard the horn line in Troy. Like the thing that got me, as soon as I heard Troy, it was that horn. Is the same thing with Bucktown. The second I heard that horn, I was like it was like frozen. It was like, what is that? You know what I mean? I want to say it was like a radio station like in Jersey that used to play underground hip hop was the first time I heard it, and I was in Philly.
PRB at Princeton. We used to go up there.
All right, and they played
on
it,
campus.
and I was like, "Yo, this joint is crazy," and there's no sample snitching because God forbid everybody knows it, but it's this Jack Bruce joint right here that one of my first digs was this because I wanted, I was like, I need the sample for that. But
stunt on all the diggers.
Nah, this ain't even no stunt. This is like this is like
kill. We know.
Right. Know. But I mean, you talk about diggers. This is like Remedial 101. This ain't even no stunt. This is, but definitely one of the first pieces I picked up. But then from there was just I was a fan. As soon as I heard Bucktown and then Let's Get It On, and and what I loved about them, and we'll get into it a little bit later, but yeah, we'll get into that later. So Porsche, tell me, what was it that you loved about the Shinin so much? Oh, you know what? Let me not even assume this. I would assume you love it because you're on the show, but how many mics do you give the Shinin? Is it a classic? Like, what do you give, or however you define classic, and then break down why you feel it is what it is.
Okay, so I do love the album. I do think it's a classic, and I give it, I give it 4 mics solid, 4.5 maybe. I mean, I'm not mad at that. And what I like about it is, honestly, I'm huge on. And I don't want to overuse this word, but honestly, cohesiveness of this album. And how like the rappers and the producers just sound, the chemistry is seamless. And like, you know, Tech and Steel aren't phenomenal rappers. They're great rappers. They're good. And they're great, but they're not exceptional like, you know, are why we think Big is, or, you know, Nas is, or whatever. But for some reason, this collaboration made them sound like exceptional rappers. And I appreciate that. And I think there's something to be said about that. Their chemistry, it's so seamless when they rap that you can almost not be able to decipher like who's finishing and who's starting. They're just so good at that all the way through. I love that they incorporate like patois in there, and I like that, you know, the beat miners were just so versatile on the beats. It's not all so the same all the time. Yeah, I think this album kind of checks all the boxes. So for sure, a classic for me. And I do love the album.
All right, no doubt. Veg, what about you?
For me, I think I give it 4.5. I think later on, even though it ends like perfectly, I think somewhere right before you get to the last couple of songs, I don't know if it's too many songs for us there, or what the case may be, but I never really I go back and forth between calling it a classic and, you know, giving it like a 4.5. But undoubtedly one of my favorite hip hop albums of all time for a lot of reasons. A lot of you know, what you guys mentioned, what I said about the how I felt when I heard "Let's Get It On." I think the album just has. I think what I liked the most was when I brought Black Moons into the stage. It had a particular vibe that I was really jiving with, so I was listening to it every day and loving it. And to know that they came out the same crew, and there was something similar about the sound, but not identical, and it made them stand out. And, you know, same thing with Helter Skelter and OGC. Even though the sound was in general similar, none of the albums sound the same. You know what I'm saying? None of the artists sound the same. Still in Tech, you know, that back and forth was just flawless, man. And certain records that they have on it that were just crazy, that just exceeded my expectations, man. And I loved it. You know, the first time I heard it, man, it was getting crazy spins. I mean, I still listen to it to this day from time to time. So again, I wouldn't be mad if somebody called it a classic. I wouldn't even fight them on it. But I just going off of how I initially felt, and not necessarily comparing it one to one to other albums, but thinking about why I consider other albums classics. And I know with this album, there was a point in the album, maybe 2 songs, 1 or 2 songs, where I started to feel like, okay, you know, this is kind of long. So,
right.
But definitely one of the best of all time.
All right, no doubt. Rec, what about you?
I think Vegas hit the nail on the head. The album, like, I give it a 4.5, but I think minus 1 or 2 songs, the album is a 5 mic classic. I think there might have been just maybe 1 or 2 songs that just didn't need to be. But the album, you know, it stood the test of time for me. You figure the album's what, 25 years, you said? And I know I've played it more than I've played, you know, certain albums in that same time span. So for me, it's a classic. You know, it's a classic when I heard it. It's a classic now. Like, for them to come out the same camp and to have that much going on from a group that you don't even know about, you never heard of, it speaks a testament, because 95, 94, that's not an easy year to come out in hip hop either, especially from the borough of Brooklyn. So those guys, man, they had it. They had it. We just didn't know until we heard the whole album.
Right. No doubt. My good brother Ev, what's good, brother?
Peace, y'all. My bad, man. I got daddy duties going on.
Hey,
Daddy duties.
hey.
So I'm on borrowed time. I can't hear you too well though. What'd you say?
No, I said it's all good, bro. You know, I definitely understand that, man. I definitely understand that. You can hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, it's low,
Right.
but that's on my side. You good though?
All right. So, yo, tell me this. We already chopped it up about this, but when was the first time you heard Smith and Wesson? And then when did you become a fan of their music?
I came in a little bit of Vegas talking about his story. It's kind of similar, man. I started with Black Moon. I was a big Buckshot fan. I was a huge Black Moon fan. So I used to run into the stage. You know, I used to just play that thing over and over and over again. And then when Smith and Wesson came out, it just to me that was like my introduction to the boot camp clique. When Smith and Wesson dropped, and like to say same thing, you know, I'm sure somebody, you know, you guys have said already, like, you know, them being down with Black Moon, and then you start to understand the Beat Miners and who the Beat Miners was, because even on End of the Stage, I knew them, I was familiar with them, but I didn't necessarily know the depths of what they did. And that Shinin album, man, was just it was my introduction to it, and it made me like a hellified fan. I just bang with them cats hard. To me, I hate to say it, though, I feel like the Shiner was probably their best record, personally. But you know, it is what it is. But yeah, that was my first introduction to Smith and Wesson, was from that. And I remember hearing, I don't know if it's, I kind of want to find out if this is true or not. I remember hearing a long time ago that actual Buck and 5FT were dancers for Smith and Wesson. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if anybody else heard that story or not.
You know what, bro? Here's the thing. I've got a whole list of fun facts here about the Shinin, and that's one of my fun facts that we both chopped up about. That's one of my fun facts. In fact, I'll give it to you now, just in case you got to bounce. What it was is I never knew this, and I always give props where props are due. This is coming from Brian Coleman's Check the Technique book, which I talk about all the time. It has the whole breakdown of the making of the Shinin. And they were saying how Still is older than everybody. You know, he's like one of the oldest ones in the crew. So Still was performing at the Apollo on an amateur night, and he needed dancers, and 5 Foot and Buckshot were his dancers. Buck and 5 were both dancers before they were MCs. So Still was the first person who was actually rhyming out that whole crew or whatever like that. So that is, they weren't dancing for Smith and Wesson, but they did dance for Still when he first got started. Yeah, so that's but I got a whole list of fun facts here for
that's some short ass dances.
This is my call right here, man. I'm gonna bounce out because I'm not gonna make this show, obviously.
Hey man, Kosi can hang out with us, man.
I try to get in when I can, y'all. I try to get in when I can.
Hey, if you get back in, jump back in, good brother.
Oh, indeed.
All right, no doubt. All right. Ed, what about you, man? What was your what do you give this? Is it a classic? What is it? Why do you like it so much?
Yeah, man. I would say definitely a classic. I'm kind of with them. To me, there's no whack songs on the album. It does feel a little long. If there was probably 2 tracks, I'd say we could do without. For me, it's track number 8, Stand Strong. And then that interlude, I think it's like second to last track, the interlude. But other than that, man, the album flows well. You know what I mean? Brooklyn Pride. I mean, I was born and raised in Brooklyn. So, you know, to hear that, you know, songs like Bucktown, you know, shouting it out, and then just kind of using that as slang throughout the album. You know, the production, we already touched on it. The patois, you know what I mean? Like going to different parts of Brooklyn, you know, you got so much culture, and you know that's part of that whole culture. You know, loved it. I actually would say that The Shining is a stronger album to me than Enter the Stage, because much like Porsche, I appreciate an album that flows well, an album with consistency, and I felt like we had that on The Shining. I feel like with Enter the Stage, because of, you know, maybe the recording process, they had some older songs and some newer songs. You know, it just sounds a little disjointed. You know, Buckshot sounds, you know, one way on some songs, and then his voice sounds completely different on others. So this album was consistent. I love the features of the whole boot camp clique. You know, having Rock on the hook on what was that song? One time. Yeah. You know, that Sean Price verse on Session at the Dogly. I mean, you know, the whole thing was just a masterpiece to me. So, you know, I'll give it 4.5 to 5 mic, you know, depending what day of the week.
All right, no doubt, no doubt. And for me, it's funny to touch on what you just said. They touched on this in the book and how the beat miners feel the same way about the album. They were saying that half of the End of the Stage album was done at Calliope Studios in New York, and the other half was finished at D&D. So that may sound maybe where some of the, you know, it's kind of not as flowing as smooth as before. And then, like I always tell cats, Biggie's album Ready to Die and Into the Stage with Me are one of the few times that we were able to literally see an MC kind of grow on wax. And what I mean by that is you can hear Big on Give Me the Loot does not sound like anything of unbelievable Big. You know what I mean? So you could tell that there was a time span from when they first started to when they finished. The same way when you hear Who Got the Props, you could tell that's not the same buck as, you know, How Many MCs Must Get Dissed. You know what I mean? And usually you don't get to hear that on an album. You know, Eric and Paris sound the same on So What You're Saying all the way to the end, or, you know, Rakim sound the same on My Melody, so I Know You Got Soul. But those are the two times that I could think of on wax where you literally can hear an MC grow. You know what I'm saying? And everything like that. For me, this is a 5 mic album. Like I said, easily one of my favorites. At the time in 95, me being at Morgan, here's the wild part. And me and JP was talking about this. The people I was running with, my Philly crew of people, they liked hip hop, but they weren't really hip hop heads. So even at Morgan, I found myself hanging around a whole bunch more New York people than Philly people, to the point more people thought I was from New York than I thought I was from Philly. Trust me, and I used to get hell from my Philly people. It's like, nigga, you think you from fucking New York, whatever. But to me, this album was just like, and Veg, I'm sure you could attest this. This was like the soundtrack to underground hip hop at the time. You know, I don't think anybody walking across Morgan's campus didn't have on some Army fatigues. I don't think anybody didn't have on an Army jacket. Like anybody didn't have on some Chukka Timbs or some Blooded Timbs. Like this was literally like the soundtrack to almost my life at that time. I remember I had people coming through my crib to record, and if cats didn't have money, I'd be like, yo, just, you know, niggas at Morgan was all stick-up kids. I'm not stick-up kids, I apologize. They were boosters. They wasn't robbing nobody, but they were boosters. So I would be like, yo, go boost me some shit from the Army Navy store. Like niggas come to my crib with a whole Army suit. Like I'm like, all right, let's go record this session or whatever. So for me, it's 5 mics. I love it. Easily one of my favorite ever. Let's go into this. Porsche, what are your top 3 songs from this?
Wait, I have a question before we move on. I know Vegas and Eddie said that, and I don't know if Veg can hear me, but like they said it was long. I'm just wondering, is it long, like hearing it now? Because it's sort of in the same length as Only Built for Cuban Links, Ready to Die. You know, like Liquid Swords is a little bit shorter, but I feel like at the time, albums were that long. Did this one just sound long when you hear it back, or did you think it was long at the time? Because for me, I didn't feel like it was long. I don't know. I didn't feel like it was long at all. In fact, I didn't even realize that it was over an hour worth of tracks, worth of like running time. And actually Only Built for Cuban Links and Ready to Die are about 2.5 minutes longer. So I'm just wondering what it is about. Is it, like, when did you realize it was a long album? Because to me, Capital Punishment is an exhaustive album. That sounds long to me, but not any other ones from that time period. So, and
you know what, Porsche, let me add this on too. And are y'all saying it's long, or are you more so saying that there were 2 or 3 songs that they didn't need, which to me are 2 different things?
Right.
Yeah. Hold up there. Oh, Veg, what you got?
The reason why I said that is for both reasons. This was at the time that I felt it was long, but I think the difference between Cuban Links and Ready to Die, there's a different variety of records there. So it's easily the length is easily masked because you had these ebb and flows and beats and styles and that Biggie did, and the same thing with Ghost and Ray and skits and of that nature. But Smith & Wesson's album, even though all the beats are different, they have a similar tone
Mm-hmm.
to them. You know what I'm saying? They all kind of dark and they all sound that
Mm-hmm.
way. And the ones that really pop, really pop. But once you get to a certain point, you know, if there's one later on, like say track 12 or whatever it may be, if that one's not popping and you've already listened to like 11 tracks, now you're
Mm-hmm.
starting to feel like, okay, well, is this the last record or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I felt at the time. Now, obviously, I don't feel like it's long because we've been through years where cats will have 20 records on an album and not call it a double CD. And you know,
Right.
like J. Cole with this deluxe joint, he like this is deluxe when the album they just put out last year was a deluxe. Uh, that shit's long.
Right.
But I don't think it was long in a negative way. I just felt at the time there were probably a song or two where I'm like, this kind of does what a couple of other songs already did
Mm-hmm.
until PNC came on. And
Mm-hmm.
PNC was totally different from what
Right.
the rest of the records.
Right.
Right. Right. And what about you, Ed?
Yeah, I mean, definitely good points made by Vegas. I agree with that a lot. The album flows really well. I do agree that sonically is very similar. I think what stands out to me is, at least now to my more mature ear, like I was 15 in '95 when this came out.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm more familiar with samples and hearing a sample, for example, like Home Sweet Home. And now I'm hearing that and I'm like, oh yeah. And Mos Def also used that, on his album, Black on Both Sides, and that ties into the album cover, which is, Roy Ayers, that's a Roy Ayers sample, stuff like that. There's
Mm-hmm.
little things like that, the hooks, all the little quirks about it that stand out, as you're going through an album. So, there's maybe one or two songs that in comparison sound a little stale. But like I said, to me, there's nothing whack on this album. But that's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
That's
no
fair.
doubt. No doubt. So Porsche, break it down, sis. What is your top 3 tracks on this album? And tell me this. I wish I would have had Eb because still on here, but who did you like better, Tech or Still? So top 3 songs on the album, and who did you like? Who did you prefer as an MC, Tech or Still?
Interesting. That's an interesting question. I can tell you right now, I don't prefer either one over the other, and it's because of the way that this album just was, the chemistry there. Again, like I said, it was one of those ones where it was just like the perfect collaboration with the production. It was such a great chemistry between the rappers, like Tech and Steel, both of them. So I don't have a preference because to me, it just sounded so unified. But with that said, my favorite joints are Bucktown, Hallucination, and Next Shit.
All right. No doubt. Rec, what about you?
So yeah, I don't have a preference over either MC. I think they flow seamlessly.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a preference there. Never has been, never will be. Favorite songs is gonna be PNC, Session at the Dog Hilly, and I'm gonna go Hallucination. It's a tie between that and One Time, depending on the time of the morning. I'm listening to One Time. Like if I'm driving to work, I'm cutting you off. I'm just telling you now. So it just depends. But that's my tie.
All right, no doubt. What about you, Eddie?
Yeah, man. I got Bucktown, I got Soundboy Burial, and I got Hallucination, man. That sample is just crazy on that, right, man. And the storytelling, crazy. But as far as Tech and Steel, maybe very, very slight edge to Tech. But honestly, I prefer when they do their back and forth. That's my favorite Smith and Wesson shit right there.
All right, no doubt. Back and forth. And what about you, Veg?
My top 3, One Time. I love that beat. I love Rock on the hook, along with the verses from Tech and Steel. Let's Get It On. That was the first joint I heard, kind of fell in love with the group. And Hallucinations is probably my favorite song on the album. That song is just magic. I love it. My favorite would be Still, only because I like his voice a lot. Um, but like you can go back and forth between who's better, who's nicer, or who had a better performance here and there. Because Tech had a couple of notable bars, you know what I'm saying, on that album and throughout the history. But there was something about Still over those beats with his voice that just really put me in that mood. And I just love that joint. So I would say Still is my favorite. Plus, I got a story about Tech, man, but you gotta let me tell that joint.
Bruh, as long as it don't ruin no dreams of hip hop fans across the planet Earth, man, go right ahead and tell your story. What's your Tech story?
This is a warm hip hop story for all you hip hop fans.
A warm hip hop.
But it's quick, it's brief. But basically, in BK, across the street where I lived on Gates Avenue, shout out to BK. There was a school I used to go to called 308, and they had like basketball courts, but they had the half court joints. And every now and again, I would go over there and play ball. And, obviously, for some of y'all who don't know, I wasn't the same age because niggas on social media think you're the same exact age years ago. But I was a young cat, and I went out there to play ball. So there's one time I went out there to play ball, and how you always get somebody to come through, and an older dude that he want to play. So you let this dude play. He take off his shirt. He is busting our ass, like everything, crossing us up, dunking on us, and I'm like, because he don't live around my way. I'm like, who the hell is this cat? And the funny part is, I think I knew his cousin because I had seen him several times before. I'd seen, obviously his cousin, but this dude who was just killing us at basketball. And when somebody killing you in basketball and you don't know them, you kind of recognize their face. So when Smith and Wesson came out, I'd be damned if it wasn't Tech who was the one who was on the court busting our ass. Because I was looking at the video like, damn, because he looked a little darker than me in the video. So I was just like, nah, that can't be him. Maybe he have a twin because this dude was, lighter. But nah, man, that was him. So see, it's a nice story. I'm a kid. Tech from Smith and Wesson is busting our ass before he drops an album. Because the album came out maybe a year later. So.
All right. I know, Vague, your stories be ruining shit. So, whenever Vague will text me, I got a story, and I'm like, do I really want to hear this story, Vague? Like, I still want to believe in Easter Bunny. So, for me, my top 3 songs, I would go with Session at the Dog Hill, Soundboy Burial, but I got to put the asterisks on it. I want the remix version. I want the video version. And even though it's not a lot different, there are some subtle things that are different in the remix version that's not in the original version that make me like it more. And one of this, and this is not, again, no sample snitching, the Wipe Your Mouth joint. You know what I mean? For some reason, I always love that sample. It's this Ahmad Jamal joint right here. I always love that. But and if I had to put a slash on there, I love Hallucination too. I think Hallucination is crazy. Got a dope story about that too. And I always prefer Tech. You know what I mean? Even though I see them together seamlessly, and I use this analogy a lot of times when I do marriage coaching and people are beefing about money, and I'll say, it's kind of like a half and half. If you got half iced tea and you got half lemonade and you make a half and half, you can't go back in and get your lemonade out, and you can't go back in and get your iced tea out. It's just seamlessly one, and that is how Smith and Wesson is, and to me, I honestly think, and we'll chop it up about this later. I honestly think they're the dopest duo to flow like that together. I'm not saying they're the dopest duo ever, but the back and forth flow of it. And Evil D said, it was breaking all the rules. I've never seen anybody do this. I've never heard of anybody doing this. But whenever they would record this album, they had 2 mics set up in the booth and they would record at the same time, and that's an engineer's nightmare because the vocals are bleeding together. If you're hired, but in Evil D said in that book I just showed y'all, check the technique, that this is like against the grain. This is against every rule of recording music, is to put 2 people in the same studio and give them separate mics, and because the voices are gonna bleed together. And what I mean by bleed is normally somebody in Vegas is at my house recording, he's recording one track and it's all Vegas, it's clean. And then if Rec is in the group, Rec will record his vocal on a whole nother track. So I can mute them if I need to turn Vegas up or turn Rec down. There's nothing in between. Whereas doing it like that is just, like I said, that's an engineer's nightmare. But it worked. You know what I mean? Obviously it worked because this is how they did it like that. Before we go into the next piece, I just want to talk about some of these fun facts about it. Fun fact that Still had a group called Most. And I talked about this before with people in the 90s that we had to make every group, our names mean something. So Most stood for Men of Steel first, you know what I mean? And then they went on to make it sound, they turned it into Major Organized Sound Troopers. that's what, and I love these stories because I swear every rapper had like a horrible first rap name. Like before Naughty by Nature, it was like, I think they called it the New Style. Like everybody had these horrible names. So the name of their group was Major Organized Sound Troopers.
They had to be big fans of G.I. Joe or something like that.
But you know what it is too, Vague. This was the time where your name had to be. I told people, Ed.O.G. and the Bulldogs stood for something. I forgot what it stood for, but it stood for something.
He said United Leaders. Damn, I forget what it is.
Living lovely off.
Right.
Sounds.
Yeah, that's it.
There you go. So for all the old young people out there, yes, us old people would make names, so they had to come up with something. And in this group, it was Still, Tech, Supreme from the Representatives, and Rock. Like that was the group. Was those four? You know what I mean? Never knew this. Tech is actually 2 years younger than Still. You know, seeing them together, I just always assumed same age. I already told you about the thing about 5 foot and them at the dancing for him. The first 3 songs recorded was Bucktown, Let's Get It On, and a joint that never dropped on the album called Nothing But the Money. Another thing,
Let's Get It On.
Another thing that cats don't know, the Beatminers almost didn't produce the album because Nervous Records still owed them royalties off of Into the Stage. And they were like, we're not doing nothing else with Nervous, you know, until we get our money right. But they didn't want to leave them hanging like that. Def Jam actually wanted to sign Chris Lighty wanted to sign Smith & Wesson to Def Jam, but they stayed with Nervous because they felt like with Nervous they were able to put out music quicker. Like people were saying they record a song on Monday and have the test pressing by Friday, versus they knew with Def Jam it would take them forever. They'd get caught up and they would never come out. This was the wild part to me. Into the Stage was recorded at night. They were going midnight to 6 a.m. But then as soon as they finished recording, they would go to master. And Evil and Walt were so tired, they said a lot of stuff got fucked up in the mastering because we were so sleepy. So the Shiner was recorded during the day. And they said just fucked up everything because Tech and them were like, yo, we don't smoke weed during the day. We smoke weed at night. Like so, but they were saying the good thing about D&D too was there's no windows, so you really don't even know it's daytime because you're in there and everything like that. But it sounds like such a nighttime winter album. So for me to hear that it was recorded during the day is kind of crazy. The Beatminers for the remix, one of my favorite remixes is the Recognized remix. And one of my favorite videos when they just looped the Grover Washington sample. Still wanted the Beatminers to do that. If people don't know, in 1995, just looping up Grover Washington's Just the Two of Us was a Cardinal hip hop set. So the Beatminers was like, nah, fuck that. We ain't doing that. So Still actually was the one. That's why it's produced by Still, because the Beatminers was like, nah, we ain't touching just no loop. You know what I mean? Because also at the time, Will Smith had just used Just the Two of Us for the song about him and his son. So that would have just been a very bad look for the Beatminers to just have looped that up. And the Dog Hilly was actually Still's mom's crib. And he was like, at the time, he was like, yo, I didn't even live there no more. Top Dog is Still's actual brother. Top Dog lived there. They said Ruck lived there for a while. Tech lived there. That basically it was like, yo, if you got kicked out the house or you was on the street, like you would go stay with Still moms. So like that was the jump off, but you couldn't stay there during the day. Like you had to go to school. Like you couldn't come in, but after school you could come, you could stay. If moms threw you out, you could come stay at Still mom's house, which I thought was dope. And the last thing, since we all loved Hallucination, they were saying how Evil had been in some sessions with Tribe during midnight, and he heard Lyrics to Go, because Hallucination is a Minnie Riperton sample. So basically, this was Evil's like attempt at making a Lyrics to Go with the high note of Minnie Riperton and everything like that. And Walt said something similar, that he was in a session for Midnight Marauders and he heard Oh My God, and then he came back and made Keep It Moving. So that was like, you know, like the and the reason why I love these stories is because this is like in the Beat Miners touched on why hip hop was so great during those times, because it was like they were all in competition with each other. Like it was like, I gotta try to, and there wasn't no beef. It was just like, yo, I gotta try to outdo Pete. I gotta outdo Tip. I gotta outdo this person. I gotta, so it was always that pushing yourself to that next level to kind of make your contemporaries proud of you and everything like that. All right, so tell me this. You got the Infamous with Mobb Deep. And a lot of people don't even realize this. It's funny. I told somebody my age this, they never even knew it, that Havoc was on Into the Stage on the joint You the Man. You know what I mean? So at some time or point, Mob, or at least Havoc, was cool with BK. And I'm always wondering, damn, why didn't we ever get no Mobb Deep, Queensbridge, Brooklyn, posse cut with Noyd, Hab and P, and Smith and Wesson and everybody? But like I said, at 889, we used to go back and forth about this. At that time in hip hop, who did you prefer? Smith and Wesson or Mobb Deep, the Shinin or the Infamous? Porsche, what about you?
I preferred Mobb Deep and I preferred the Infamous. And I think I don't know, like I can't really give a reason why. I just gravitated towards Prodigy and Havoc. Like they're my second favorite duo of all time. So and they still are. So for me it was, and I mean I was introduced to Smith and Wesson a little late. I get that. Mobb Deep was available to me at the time. I didn't have to wait to move to Vancouver to find them. So for me, I had like that time with the Infamous album. So yeah, I mean, I definitely pick Mobb.
All right. What about you, Eddie?
Yeah. Even though, Brooklyn Pride and all that, but the Infamous, man, that was the one. I mean, I remember hanging out with my cousin, and, that was on tap along with CNN's The War Report. It was just what we gravitated to more, you know what I mean? And, Bucktown, and, there was joints on, there was joints on The Shinin' that, we would obviously, play, throwing the mixes and stuff. But as far as like going out there and just blasting the whole album front to back, the Infamous was that album.
All right, no doubt. Rec, what about you?
Shining came out. I'm sorry, my bad. I'm with everybody else, man. The Shining came out first and hit hard. But that Infamous, man, it came out and it just lasted longer, man. I think they had more singles as a whole. It just had a little bit lasting staying power at that time. I don't know if it was the hoopla around the album as far as with all the extended, features as far as just people being involved. But I'm going with the Infamous, man. I just know what it was around that time. It was cats was walking around talking about Dunny and Gecko and ain't never been to Queensbridge. So not to say that they wasn't doing that, trying to be like from Brooklyn, but I'm going with the Infamous.
All right. What's up with you, Van?
I gotta go with Mobb Deep, man. And the Infamous. I think my reactions to both of those albums were totally different and kind of in a funny way was based off of the album that kind of, I guess, jumped it off, like how we were saying Into the Stage was like your introduction to Boot Camp Click and Black Moon and all of that. And I feel like Mobb Deep predecessor was Illmatic, as far as like this new revolution of Queensbridge MCs, you know what I'm saying? They kind of got off the coattails, which admittedly they, Prodigy said that before, off of Illmatic, which obviously Illmatic is a stronger album than Black Moon for most people. But I say the Infamous because, yo, man, Prodigy was a monster, and there is nothing on The Shinin', no shade, nothing like Eye for an Eye. Nothing like that. That record was instant conversation at your school with your homies, debating who had the better verse, like for days off of that one record, not even the rest of the records that were crazy. Um, I just think lyrically, Prodigy was at his prime on that album, and I feel like you mentioned earlier, Smith and Wesson was more like a combo. You know what I'm saying? You kind of didn't always look at them as individuals. And the beats were crazy. You know what I'm saying? And it's hard to say which one was better because they both hot. But I think I just gravitated way more towards the Infamous.
Right. It's funny, as most of the time, I'm the odd man out because at the time I felt like it was the Shinin. You know what I mean? And I love both albums. Now, years later, I look back and I would choose the Infamous, but at that time I was always the lone soldier champion, the Shinin. And I think for me, and a lot of it has to do with me being a producer first. You know what I mean? Because I don't think I really started getting into and everything y'all are saying makes 100% sense. It's true that Prodigy was just a monster. But I think because I was such a producer, as long as the song was dope, I never really was like, my ears weren't tuned into, that Tech and Steel weren't these lyrical surgeons. You know what I mean? Like I was like, yo, Bucktown is dope. Shook Ones is dope. You know what I mean? Now looking back at it years later, I feel like I don't know what it is because I'm still a producer at heart. I just think now everybody is looking at lyrics more. But I know for me at that time, I was just like, yo, this just, represented what I loved more at the time. And what I mean by that is it represented one of my favorite eras of hip hop production. And what I mean by that is that during this album, Bucktown, they were still using a lot of drum loops. And the people watching may not know a drum loop is just a breakbeat. You find a drum loop, you kind of, when you hear a Bucktown, it's literally a sample on top of a drum loop. That's that. It represented the filtered bass lines. And what a filtered bass line is when you have a sample, you take all the highs out of it and you get nothing but the lows. And that low end is essentially what makes the speakers rattle and everything like that. It had the echoing horns, and when you look at the Infamous, it was really almost the next level of production. You know what I mean? We're talking about Havoc chopping up the drums, and chopping the drums is instead of using the whole break beat, I'm gonna take the kick from here, the snare from here, and I'm gonna reprogram it myself. You know what I mean? So I think just at the time, it was just this was just nostalgia for me. It was just this is my favorite time of hip hop production. It was Brooklyn. It sounded like Brooklyn. It felt like Brooklyn. But years later, now when I look back at it, I probably listened to this and then the Infamous, and I was like, I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. The Infamous is better. And again, that's no shade. I think we all said that's no shade on Shinin, but just those Infamous, and Vegas knows them 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. arguments, man. Every Friday of being at the radio station, I just was always Smith and Wesson. But I can look back and say now that I definitely think it's the Infamous for every reason that you guys said. So tell me this. We have Smith and Wesson. We all said this is a classic album, whether how many mics we give it, we all say it's classic. We all want to salute the album. Why is it, or what do you think it was that Smith and Wesson could never come back to match this magic? And we'll use Mobb Deep as an example. I mean, Mobb had the Infamous, and then they came back with Hell on Earth. And I know a lot of people who feel Hell on Earth is better than the Infamous. I disagree personally, but to me, it's no right or wrong answer. They're both incredibly dope albums. I just prefer the Infamous to Hell on Earth. We got Murder Music. You know what I mean? Mobb was able to continually keep on making great music. I mean, after The Shining came out in 95, you had The Rude Awakening in 98 when they had to change their names to the Cocoa Brothers. Then you had Reloaded, which didn't even come out till 2005. So you're talking from 98 to 2005. We didn't even hear from Smith and Wesson. I think a lot of that was going on with them trying to get out of their contract with Nervous and everything like that. And then they had Smith and Wesson, the album in 2007. Then they had this joint Monumental in 2011 that Pete Rock did. And I'll get in my opinion on that. They actually had a reggae EP that a lot of people don't even know it came out called Born and Raised. And that was 2017. And then they dropped the album last year, The All, that was produced by Ninth Wonder and his production team. But number one, I guess, do you feel like that there were albums that did match The Shining? And if not, why do you think they weren't able to recreate that magic? Porsche, what do you think?
For me, I don't think that they were able to recreate it. I think they tried. Definitely, of course, they tried. But I think that, to me, like, what I would think is, honestly, the production changed. They weren't teaming up with the Beat Miners anymore. And as I'm saying throughout this entire kind of time, has been that I feel like the Beat Miners brought out the best in them, and their everything, like cohesion, like the flows were so seamless, the beats were just complementary to that, and you can't kind of recreate that if you're not, like, if you're steering away from that, you know. So I think The Shining is kind of like it's on its own, and I think that the gap between 98 and 2005 was kind of a really big one. So a lot changes in that time period, right? So the sound of hip hop changed. You have, like, from even, like from The Shining to the 2005 release, which was, what was it?
That was Reloaded.
Reloaded. It's just a completely different soundscape of hip hop. Like, it's not even the same anymore. And when you go to, like, and of course, I feel like they wouldn't have gone back to what they did in 95, because they're trying to, as most artists do, try to keep up with the times. So for me, I just think that they weren't able to ever come back from that. And it's honestly probably based on production. And I'm a lyrics over production person, but I do get why production is so important on an album, because it's things like this. It's exactly things like this that the production needs to carry it, and it just didn't. So,
right, because it's essentially the rhymes aren't changing. You know what I mean? Like, I can't say.
That's the thing, and that's exactly the thing. So, so where is it missing? It's missing on the production side, and I mean, Kill, you always say if you love an album, it's probably due to the production. The production is probably what's grabbing you and engaging you initially. So, that's just.
Eddie, what about you?
Yeah, for me, I think the name change did not help, because anyone who was checking for Smith and Wesson, right, and now you have that 3 years gap, and now you don't even know the album dropped because now they're Cocoa Brothers, and I think mentally, when you look at a name change like that, oh, now they're Cocoa Brothers, you start getting ideas in your head. All right, what is this going to sound like? It's going to be different. And, like you said, Kill, Beat Miners only did 1 or 2 tracks on it. The Chemistry album, there was a few, there was a few joints I liked. I think, the Monumental album, I'll put it like this with that. I think the production, I don't necessarily think it was the problem necessarily. It just maybe wasn't for them. Pete Rock did his thing. Maybe the production wasn't for them. And I think another issue I see with them is, as far as lyrics and their content, is kind of straddling the fence. They're getting older. They're still trying to talk about the same things and maybe talk about it in a little different way. And if I'm honest, my favorite Smith and Wesson album since The Shinin' is probably the one that got released this year, The All. And my reason is, and I know it doesn't sound anything like The Shinin', but I felt they finally embraced their maturity, which I kind of felt was holding them back. They embraced their maturity, and me, as now I'm 40, I could relate to a lot of the stuff that they were saying in that album and the way they were spitting. Say what you want about Ninth Wonder. I feel like Ninth Wonder gave them a good backdrop for that content.
All right, no doubt. What about you, Rep?
I agree with Eddie and Push. I more so lean on the fact the reason why the second album didn't work is because of the production. I think they did the best job they could to let people know that the name change was there because of the lawsuit or whatever. But I think didn't the B minus break up or something like that around that time?
Well, really what it was, and they didn't break up. For some reason, there was some hoopla that to this day I've never heard or found out where there was a discrepancy.
There was an issue.
There was an issue. Somebody sent me something that like Helter Skelter was on like Rap City back in the day talking shit about the Beat Miners. Okay. So I think that was a problem too.
I think I think they may have not been prepared for that. I don't think they were prepared for that from a production standpoint. And I think that kind of threw them in a situation where they just had to kind of get what they could get production wise. No, I don't think they've ever been able to recreate, everything from around the Shining. That's a hard task, man. 95, the soundscape of what they put out, they caught wind hard, and I don't think 97, 98, that particular sound, no, they weren't doing that. So I don't think they would have ever been able to catch the sound of 97, 98. I just think they were at the tail end of a great era and just got caught up,
All right, no doubt. What about you, Vic?
For me, I think I think The Shining obviously is their hands down their best album. I think the reason why they were unable to really capture that again, at least in that way, was mainly for what everybody else said. You know what I'm saying? The beats changed. I think in some ways also, the rhyme styles got a little bit more aggressive. Like they always had like aggressive lyrics, but everything was laid back on The Shining for the most part. Even when they were aggressive, they didn't really raise their voice or fit a bunch of words in their bars. They kind of kept it kind of even killed, you know what I'm saying? And I felt like once they got some of those different beats, they started to try to match those beats. And unfortunately, when they had to change the name to the Cocoa Brothers, I just wasn't here for none of that. Like, yo, y'all named the Cocoa Bread, like Cocoa Bread? Like, nah, man. Nah. So I couldn't do it because I was in love with the sound on The Shining. You know what I'm saying? I wanted that sound. I wanted I thought their sound as MCs matched well with the Beat Miners beats. I thought it brought out the best in them as far as the quality in their voices as well as lyrically. And like you said, lyrically, it's not like they got worse because they really did. It was just because they didn't get the right beats to match their sound. It's similar to like Snoop. Like anytime Snoop works with Dr. Dre, it takes you right back to the Chronic. It takes you right back to Doggy Style. Doesn't matter how old he gets, it feels like home compared to when he started dibbling and dabbling with too many different sounds. There are producers that worked for Snoop, but it's nothing like the Snoop and Dre sound. So it was the same thing with the Boot Camp and Smith and Wesson in particular. And even though I like the All a lot, and I like the joint with Pete Rock, I wrote them off after a while because, like you said, that gap with all those changes, the Cocoa Brothers and different beats, and I'm already not liking that. And then they take this long period of time off, and between that time, you done had, Jay-Z ascend and 50 Cent emerge, and all these different things happen, and you come out with an album. And the last thing I liked from you was 1995, and here you are in 2005. Like that's too big of a gap in hip hop, at least at that time. But I'm glad to see that they were able to come back because with all we said about Boot Camp Click and changing that sound, not having the Beat Miners, it was bad for everybody except Sean Price. Sean Price is like the ghost face of Boot Camp Click because once he stopped doing the Helter Skelter thing, he kind of maintained that sound, and that sound never left his music at all for the most part. And as you can see, it did the same. It was bad for Black Moon just as well as Smith and Wesson. So I think that was the major thing with them.
Right. I feel you. And again, me, especially being a producer, is that. But Vay, before I go to my thing, I want to touch on something you said with Sean P. I think the dopest thing about P was that P knew who he was. You know what I mean? P had a personality, because I remember my man Lunchbox telling me, like, yo, you got to hear a new Sean Price album. I was like, who that? He was like, Rock. And I'm like, oh, you mean Rock? He was like, no, the other nigga, Rock. And I'm like, that nigga got beats, like, or that nigga got bars. But, he was like, nah, man. Like, he's like, yo, I'm the brokest rapper out here. You know what I mean? And it's like, Rock had a foundation to stand on, where I think a lot of the other members in the clique really didn't have anything to stand on. Like if I say like, what's Tech shit? Can anybody tell me like something about Tech? Like, is there anything you could tell me about Buck or, Top Dog or Strang? Like with Sean P, you could be like, yo, that nigga don't give a fuck. Like it was something about P that he just stood on that everybody just loved. And I always say, yo, P was one of the few MCs from the 90s that still I would get excited when he'd be like, I got something new coming out. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not too many MCs from the 90s. People will say, oh, I'll listen to it. Niggas will listen to anything, but are you hyped for it? But whenever I'm like, something new by Sean P, I'm all ears. He had his own style, like that whole P. Like Sean P he had his own shit, whereas I don't think not a lot of other people in the clique really had their own sound or their own foundation of who they were. So I think that's why for a huge piece, because I don't think anybody, same like you just said, Veg, that anybody could have told you Ghostface, nobody was going to believe you in 1993 if you said Ghostface Killer is going to be the dopest rapper still standing in the woo. Nobody would have believed you. As soon as Helter Skelter broke up, I was like, yo, I feel sorry for that other nigga. Like, I never even called him Rock. He was always that other nigga. Like, I feel sorry for dude because Rock got the voice, so it's a rap for him. And look who proved me wrong for many years. I think the big thing I remember after the Shinin and all those albums, they finally was doing the Boot Camp Posse album called For the People. And I remember being hyped for this. Bezo, Shadi, all the Roots, all us Morgan beat producers was hyped. And when we heard that album, we was like, yo, what the fuck? And it was Buck doing the beats and still doing the beats. And there was no samples. And we was like, yo, what the hell is going on? And it's one of those. Let me try to say this in a nice way, because y'all know Cassidy is my man. I'm not throwing shots, but y'all all saw the video of Cassidy really enjoying that beat that he was making. He was really enjoying that beat. And my thing is, if I played you that beat, Cass, you are not bobbing your head like that to that beat, So it's obvious to me that when you're an MC making a beat, you hear something that just you can zone in on. So, because I'm like, I don't even know how y'all left the studio. After making Into the Stage and The Shinin' and Nocturnal and The Storm, how did y'all go into the studio and hear these beats and be like, yo, I'm gonna rip that? Like, come on, you know what I mean? So, and then I think some of the production with The Rude Awakening was the same thing. Like, and I want to do a show about this, and we got to do some research on this, because in '97 I moved to Atlanta. I graduated Morgan, I moved to Atlanta. And Vega, I always tell people, old heads will understand this. In Superman 2, Superman decides to get with Lois Lane. He's got to be human, so he gives up his power. He gets into a rumble at the diner and he gets punched and his nose starts bleeding and he's like, oh shit, like I'm human. That's how I felt when I moved to Atlanta, because it was like, oh shit, I gotta buy music. Like for the past 6 years of my life, I done been getting everything for free. Now I gotta buy music. And it's 97 and I brought Mike Geronimo's album coming off The Natural and I was like, this album's gonna be incredible. It was whack. I brought The Rude Awakening coming off of the Shinin'. I was like, this is gonna be incredible. It was whack. In my life, the J album, I felt like it was half whack, half good. But even that, something about 97 changed. And we got to do the research. And I mean, of course, it's something with the labels. But to me, it's just no coincidence that 4 people's follow-up albums to these classic albums, and I was just disappointed in them all. You know what I mean? But I think that happened. And I think the biggest thing, and you all touched on it, the beat minus sound. It's something about it. Like Eddie, you said, there's nothing wrong with Monumental. But to me, Pete Rock just doesn't give you the beat minus sound. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's the same thing with Derringer. Derringer gives Griselda a specific kind of sound. Do I like Griselda over Pete Rock beats? Yeah, it's dope. Is it better than him over Derringer beats? Not in my opinion. It's something about that gritty, grimy stuff that Derringer just gives you. And it's just like, no, and the same thing, like you said, with the My All album. There's nothing wrong with them Ninth Wonder beats. It just isn't that. You know what I mean? So for me, that's why they just have never been able to come back. And Veg, you made a great point. You all did with Prodigy. I felt like while other people were stepping up their game lyrically, they just stayed the same. You know what I mean? Like, so now you got ball players all doing the Euro step. Imagine if you just still had somebody doing the boring crossover. Like, that's Smith and Wesson to me. Like, they weren't getting better. They were just still doing the same moves that when you watch basketball in 2019, it does not look like basketball from 1995. Nah. It's a whole new style to playing this game. And, they just never got better. You know what I mean? So I think that all those things kind of get to this point to where, like I said, I'm talking to people who I know love hip hop, and they like, yo, I never knew Smith and Wesson had 6 more albums out, you know, and like Vague, like you said, nor did I care because I wrote them off, you know, 10 years ago, you know. So, but at the end of the day, were you gonna say, Portia?
Sorry, I just have to say one thing. I know we keep bringing up like Mobb Deep and stuff, and especially to this point that you're saying like everybody else was stepping up their game. We also got to remember that like Mobb Deep stepped up their game because Juvenile Hell was shit. Like Jizza stepped up his game because the debut was shit. You know what I mean? Like these albums that kind of came out at that time were also like what was happening before that. I feel like Smith and Wesson sort of had, I think they think, or maybe they thought they had some sort of like, you know, safety card or something where whatever they were just coming off like what Enter the Stage, and they were dope on that, and then they do the Shining and they're dope on that, so they're sitting here thinking like, okay, well, we've got this, you know, whatever we do, we've got this. And it's not always the case. They just weren't able to bounce back like Mobb Deep was. I mean, Mobb Deep is like an example on its own for a lot of things because of how polar opposite Juvenile Hell and Infamous was. So I'm listening to all of this conversation and I'm thinking like, it's so tough to compare Mobb Deep to Smith and Wesson in that way because they had to step up. Otherwise, like Mobb would have never been able to recover, right? So,
what were you gonna say, Beck?
One thing on WNYC Studios, I know I work for them, but they produced a podcast called about Prodigy, mostly about his health. But he obviously talked a lot about hip hop. It does tell the story of Mobb Deep and hip hop from Prodigy's own words. And I think what he said about Juvenile Hell to the Infamous and why that change happened is the same thing that was present in Black Moon album, that was present in Hallucination, and a couple of people's projects. Illmatic happened. Nobody was rhyming like that. Like nobody, as far as the cadence. After Illmatic, a lot of people that would come out, like Mike Geronimo, reminded you a little bit of Nas and the sound and that cadence. And I think a lot of people were influenced, and Prodigy said that about the Infamous. He said, you know, they was doing what 90s hip hop sound like on Juvenile Hell at that time. But Illmatic came out and said, this is what the next level sounds like. And so they changed their approach lyrically, beat-wise, everything. Everything became more dark and sinister feeling and gritty. And lyrically, they cared more about the wordplay. But the commentary became more about the street. So it's easy to say that, you know, because Smith and Wesson had the benefit of coming out after some of these projects, they had people to look at, like you said earlier, Kill, things to compete with as far as lyricists. They could see that the bar was being raised lyrically. Because even on Into the Stage, they're rhyming a little bit different than what you get on The Shining. They're a little bit more aggressive. And then they kind of dial it back, I guess, because of the beats. But I think that was one thing that I took, especially from that Prodigy podcast. It's called The Realness, by the way. That made me just think about hip hop in general at that time. Because I'm like, damn, he's just straight said that they just heard Illmatic and they changed everything. And you kind of think that, but it's different to hear it from someone who actually did it. You know what I'm saying?
And then the other thing too is, and I don't want to always, I feel like this is like, oh, the white man is keeping us down. I'm not using it as an excuse, but it's one of those, the label made me do it. So, I mean, from watching the Wu biography, I mean, not the Wu biography, the Wu joint on Hulu, it kind of was like, yo, Jizza and RZA didn't really want to do this type music, but like Cold Chillin' was kind of, and even in that Juice Crew book, they were talking about that a little bit because people forget that, I want to say, was it the RZA Jizza? One of them was signed to Cold Chillin', and it was kind of like, they was trying to make him he was trying to make them the ladies' man. And it was like, I don't want to be the ladies' man. You know, like I want to make this type of music, but the label is doing that. With my being so young, I would just assume, this is just a kill assumption, that at that time everybody was the youngsters, ABC. It was very, kid friendly, because then you look at, you want to talk about a switch, look at the youngsters' first album and then go look at the Aftermath. Like, you talking about, I was like, yo, who are these niggas? Like, they got bald heads, they from Jersey now, and then on the third album, they was the Illy Full of Funksters. Like, I don't know if any hip hop group has gone through more changes than the youngsters. And the change they named but then by the third album, they was from Philly again. So I don't, not to give them an excuse with Juvenile Hell, but I just think that those may be some of those things that, and I think the thing that saved Mob too is they did their own production. Like, Havoc was able to keep his sound. You know what I mean? So it was just like Havoc, because like you said, Veg, there's nothing on here like Eye for an Eye. I don't know if Smith & Wesson has a song like Still Shining, and that ain't even Mobb Deep's dopest song, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, Still Shining was just, so again, I think there's so many things that play into that, but I just think the production was just huge. And like you said, Veg, the bar of MCing got raised so much that it was kind of just like, I don't know if they or anybody in the boot camp outside of Sean P could do that, because Black Moon dropped the album last year. I haven't heard anybody anywhere in the Twitterverse even mention that album again. You know what I mean? So, and that was all produced by the Beat Miners. And I mean, even as a producer, you can miss a step. You could lose a step. You know what I mean? If you're not keeping, and I don't think it's about keeping your ear to the streets to try to say for Evil D and Walt to try to make no beat for Meg Thee Stallion. You know what I mean? But for what Derringer did on the WWCD album for Griselda, those beats sound they don't sound dated to me. You know what I mean? I don't listen to the new Griselda album like, oh man, it sounds like some 90s boom bap. But I don't feel like Derringer is trying to go like get radio play either. You know what I mean? So I just don't think everybody knows how to just kind of keep up. But it's sad because, like I said, this to me is one of my favorite hip hop albums ever. So, I mean, I just was really looking forward to a long future. I feel like these dudes are like Tracy McGrady to me, like, or Grant Hill. Like, I was really looking forward to seeing a whole career of Grant Hill or seeing a whole career of Penny Hardaway, and we just didn't get it. You know what I mean? And then sometimes you forget about Penny. Most people don't forget about Grant, but you forget about the Jamal Mashburns. You forget about the players who were excellent players, but because of injuries just didn't happen. I kind of feel like that way with Smith & Wesson, because I knew after this, I was like, we're going to have a long, these dudes are going to have a long career, and they essentially didn't. You know what I mean? So always a dope show, y'all. Vegas, give them all the info. Yo, what's up,
hold
man?
up. You had like 2 other categories.
Oh, my bad,
right.
man. What you got? I'm sorry, man. I suck, man.
You had how did this album rank in 1995? Did it meet your top 5? And you had are they top 5 duos? Right.
So what you got?
So as far as ranking in 1995, I would rank it in my top 5 for 1995, which includes Only Built for Cuban Links, Liquid Swords, Infamous, and Me Against the World. As far as top duos, I have ahead of them, I have Outkast, Mobb Deep, Run DMC, and A Tribe Called Quest. And I don't know if I could put them ahead of De La Soul, which to me is a duo. Or
EPMD.
Okay, now I know. I'm not putting them ahead of EPMD.
Right.
Doing that.
Right.
Top 10 for sure.
Right. It's so funny because you naming those albums, just from a production standpoint, this album feels like it was made in 93. Because the albums you're naming production wise don't sound anything like this. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like Cuban Links, the production just is not, so it's crazy. But in the book, they said they started recording in 94. So I don't know if they were beats from 93, but this just has a very 93 feel to it, especially after you just naming those other albums that came out in 95. You know what I mean? It is telling years later. But Rec, what about you? Same questions. Does it crack your top 5 of 95? And do Smith & Wesson crack your top 5 duos?
It barely cracks my top 5 of 95 because I wasn't a huge Me Against the World fan. All the albums Vague named, those are the albums that I have here on my list, with the exception of Me Against the World. So it cracks my top 5, but they're not in my top 5 of duos. No way, shape, or form.
Okay.
No
All
way,
right,
shape, or
Porsche.
form. Mm-mm.
What about you, Porsche?
No, the Shining doesn't make my top 5. It may make my top 10, but definitely not my top 5 at all. Not even close. But and as far as Smith and Wesson for duos, I can't even rank them top 5.
Yeah, I'm with
All
you.
right.
No.
Just interested. What makes your top 5, or what are some of the joints that come before the Shiner for 95?
Oh, I got Only Built for Cuban Links, Liquid Swords. I got Do or Die, or Do or Die, I should say, AZ's joint. There's Do You Want More? Yeah, like KRS-One's joint. Yeah, there's a lot.
Okay.
So Me Against the World, Safe and Sound, DJ Quick. I mean, Coast to Coast released that year. There's a lot of really standout albums. It's like great. It's probably top 10, and 95 was a really good year for hip hop. So that's not a slight to the album at all. But as far as top 5, I can't. I have 5 already.
All right, no doubt. What about you, Eddie?
Actually, the Shining for me in 95, I'll probably rank it number 4. And the 3 albums I have again ahead of it, the ones that everyone already mentioned, Liquid Swords, Only Built for Cuban Links, and The Infamous. So I'll probably put that right at number 4. Smith and Wesson, as far as duos, and for me, when I say duos, I'm not talking about rapper DJ. Like, to me, rapper and DJ or rapper producer is a whole different category. So ahead of them, I got EPMD, Outkast, Mobb Deep, MOP, Organized Confusion. There might be others I'm forgetting, but they might be top 10, but definitely not top 5.
All right, no doubt. Same for me. It does crack my top 5 in 95. No, they're not a top 5 duo of all time, which is crazy because, again, I just had such – after the Shining, it was just like – it's like seeing Luka play right now for Dallas. God forbid something happened to Luka next year. It's like I'm expecting to see this boy play for the next 20 years, the next 10 years. I'm bugging 20, but at least the next 10 years too. And again, the album cover that Eddie was talking about, the Roy Ayers, he's coming. I'll never forget it. I was at my man Little Mike's house. We were going through his records to get stuff ready for Strictly Hip Hop. I saw this and just lost my mind. I was like, yo, that's crazy. And here's the 7-inch of the original joint. Like, this was the original picture before they went and put the eye in it like that. And then even on the vinyl is dope. They have it like that with the vinyl, with the picture on the vinyl, which is dope too. So definitely, again, one of my favorite albums. But like I said, I just wish we could have got more crazy music from the Beat Miners, because I feel like people always have their groove. Like, it's kind of like the show we did with when Benny was like 97 Hov. Like, your favorite Nas, like 95 Nas or 97 Hov, or like, I just felt like the Beat Miners, they had their window of opportunity as far as production, and I just, some of the joints, I got a Best of Beat Miners mixtape, and I'm like, yo, what if they would have gave that Rod Digger Tight to Smith and Wesson for the next album? Like, that may have been crazy, you know what I'm saying? Or what if they gave some of the stuff they were giving out to, other artists to the beat, to the boot camp? What would that have sounded like? You know what I mean? So again, that breakup, there's almost like, I always tell people, it's like the Funk Brothers leaving Motown. When Motown left Detroit, moved to Cali, the whole sound changed. And that was like the end of Motown. Like, because Motown was the Funk Brothers. You know what I mean? No matter how great the singers were, the artists were, whatever, it was the Funk Brothers. And when they left Detroit, it was a rap. And kind of like the same thing with I almost feel like when they left the Beat Miners, almost like them niggas left Brooklyn and I don't know, moved to, I don't know. I don't want to diss nobody else's town where they from, so let me shut up. But they moved somewhere else. They moved from Brooklyn.
In a sense, you're right, man, because the sound left.
When they talk trash about Biggie, that's when it happened.
What'd you say, Vic?
Okay.
Say it again, Vic. I
Okay.
hear you.
Okay.
What did he say? I couldn't hear.
He said when they talk trash about Biggie. Remember in the Soundboy Burial video, they had the little Biggie thing, and then they pistol whip String Wonder up in the stew.
Yeah,
so,
there was some beef. I remember.
The street cred just went.
Yeah.
Down the drain.
Right. And then something else about that too is that I almost feel like they switched to gentrify Brooklyn. Like this right here was Brooklyn, and that non-sample stuff is that gentrified. Like Sky Zoo said, he said, you know, shouts to my block and all the fiends that are crossing the new Goldilocks bitches screaming over porridge. Like that's it right there. You know that the new boot camp sound became the gentrified Brooklyn sound. So that's what it is. Vay, give them all the info, good brother.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Vegas World INC, and you could check out my podcast, Hip Hop Now Podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right, no doubt. DJ Rec, give him everything.
All right, man. So Twitter is at DJ Rec1. Instagram is at DJ Rec1 as well. And then mixes, I got a mix up right now. It's DJ Rec1 on Mixcloud. So the DJ Rec1 is DJ WR ECK1NE. So hit that up, download it, tell a friend to tell a friend. They're coming every week.
No doubt. Porsche, give them everything, miss.
Twitter is just at Cherche La Porsche.
All right. Eddie, give them everything.
Twitter at EddieD80 and Instagram at Eddie Got Soul, SOLE.
And you already know it is with me, Kill 889, Will Make Beats for Food. Quick little Twitter, not shit I started, but this is what I need from y'all folk out there who follow me on Twitter. I need you hip-hop know-it-all motherfuckers to leave me alone. I really honestly need y'all to do that shit. And this is the reason why. Like, I'm reading the Juice Crew book, and I'm like, oh, snap, yo, I didn't know, you know, I never knew where the word Illmatic came from. You know, I kind of never thought about it. I thought Nas just made it up. I'm reading in the book, like, nah, it was some dude in Queensbridge, like Illmatic Ice. And then they said Tragedy said it on Marley's first album. So I'm like going to my headphones, and I'm like, mind is blown. And I tweet this out like, you know, wow, this is. And of course, here come you smart ass motherfucker. Oh, you ain't know that. Everybody, nigga, y'all know y'all ain't know that shit. Like, stop it. Like, I honestly, y'all gotta stop. Here's the thing I need y'all to do. Y'all got three options. You could either ignore the tweet. If you knew Illmatic Ice, Vay, you grew up in Queensbridge. Did you know Illmatic Ice? Okay. And this was a man whose cousin is Ill Will. But you gonna tell me some random mofo from South Carolina knew Illmatic Ice in Queensbridge. Stop it, y'all. Stop it. Y'all didn't know. Y'all didn't do it. So stop. So all I'm saying is you could ignore it. You could say, hey, damn, Kill, I thought you would have known that. But y'all, I'm glad you found out. Or you could unfollow me. Because I can't do the same thing. I was like, I didn't know Jay-Z got his name. They said because of J and the Z train run through Marcy. Here come 100, 800 niggas from Brooklyn. Oh, y'all ain't know that. And but then other people tell me, nah, Jay got his name because he said he was a jazzy driver. I just need y'all to stop acting like y'all fucking know it all. Stop, because you don't. Y'all don't know it all. Y'all don't know. I swear on my mom's life, y'all. I know more. I will forget more hip hop than the average nigga on my timeline knows. Stop it. Just stop it. Please stop it, y'all. Or just unfollow me because the shit is bad, y'all. So that's just my little Twitter rant for the week. It's goddamn know-it-alls, man. Like, y'all gotta stop it, man. That's not cool. I tell everybody, my pastor taught me, you should never be the smartest person in the room. That's why I keep these people right here around me, because I learn something new every week. But you can't learn nothing if you honestly believe in your heart of hearts, you already know it all. And I don't mean to be like on some old, like, where you're from. I just don't know if a nigga from South Carolina knows as much about hip-hop as somebody who's from up top. And again, I don't mean to start that, but I'm just being real with you, like, my nigga. I don't know how much hip hop they was playing in South Carolina. I just don't know, you know. But that's my Twitter rant for the day. So there y'all go. I will check y'all next week, y'all. Yo, next week.